Add the notes for this one. All right, Proverbs 17. Better is a dry morsel and quietness therewith than a house full of sacrifices and strife. I think we've been reading enough of Proverbs to know the general gist of this proverb. I guess a couple interesting notes is the dry morsel has the idea of stale, crusty fragment. All right, so ever had the real brown bread from like Outback or something? Imagine the heel portion of that 3 or 4 days later. Okay, better to have some stale, crusty bread or fragment of food and quietness, peaceableness, than a house full of sacrifices. Well, what's the idea behind the sacrifices? Is those are animals that are going to be slaughterable. Right? The prodigal son comes home and dad kills the fatted calf. Yeah, that's the one that's not been used in the labor. It's not tough and hard. It's had a tender life until he'll be tender. Right? Well, a house that's full of those slaughterable animals means you don't have to kill just the one chicken when the preacher comes over. Right? You have choices. So it's a house of wealth and many opportunities to eat different things. If you just looked at the outside, folks may often choose, well, that sounds a lot better to have, the natural wealth versus a poorer state. But in God's view and for ours, valuing peacefulness versus strife, conflict, contention, anger. Sometimes I'm a little grumpy when I wake up from my nap. It's not pleasant to be around, right? So that's the idea. Any questions on that? 2. A wise servant shall have rule over a son that causeth shame, and shall have part of the inheritance among the brethren. All right, so think about Abraham, where he was saying that Eleazar, his steward, was his heir. Right? He was a wise servant. Obviously, he had made him an overseer. And so in a wealthy man's household, you had a natural-born son, but he was foolish in character and conduct and was disgraceful to the family. This proverb is saying that the wise servant is preferred before that son, even though they share genetics, and he would actually have the rule. He'd be more likely to be put in charge, and that he'll share a part of the inheritance among the brethren.
So it's not the absence of the father taking over.
Yeah, no, this is the father promoting the wise servant.
The father is promoting the wise servant over
the son that causes shame.
Not the wise servant taking care of the foolish son.
Okay. It's who's being entrusted with responsibility and management. The one that's trustworthy. But not treating him just like a servant. He's actually, tendering him, part of the inheritance. Now, just to keep it complicated, you could relate that to our message this morning about natural-born Jews, and then the broader category of those who aren't sons by nature, and yet they are given a part in the inheritance, Gentiles, and the description there of being wise. Well, what's the beginning of wisdom? The fear of the Lord. Whereas the fool says there is no God, or has not the fear of the Lord before their eyes. So you can see these in a bigger picture when you've really been chewing on the New Testament and seeing what God has ordained and worked out. You can see those in a larger scale. All right, this one's fun. The finding pot is for silver, and the furnace for gold, but the Lord trieth the hearts. We got 3 different objects under consideration. Silver, apparently that melts at about 1700 degrees, and so a finding pot is like a crucible, a dish that can be heated up a lot. The silver ore, the mixture, will melt down, and the impurities in the silver float up, called slag, and you scrape it off, and what you're left with is more pure silver. You can test something that looks like really good silver by putting it in the crucible, and then you see what it's really made of. Same thing for gold. Gold melts at about 1900 degrees, and the furnace is like a forge. Right? Forge a fire, you need more heat, more heat to do the same thing, to take this gold to either see if it's truly pure, see what comes off, or to melt down the impure state to get the gold there. So what tries the heart? And those things, so those silver and gold, they're being tested, they're being proven, the purity is being established. It's the Lord that trieth the hearts. Does the Lord have to melt your heart to see what it's made of? No, right? We can't just look at a hunk of gold and figure out its purity. We have limited knowledge, but the Lord knows so much. He can look directly at your heart and test it and prove it and see it. He has full knowledge. A wicked doer gives heed to false lips, and a liar gives ear to a naughty tongue. It's kind of a cycle here, isn't there? One who's willing to give their attention and effort and listen to things that are false and deceitful and harmful, and the ones who are false and deceitful and harmful themselves. Whoso mocketh the poor reproacheth his maker. What's it mean to reproach? Bring shame, to insults. Whoso mocketh the poor. Does that mean you're just making fun of somebody in the street corner? Could be, but more often than not, the context of coming against the poor is taking advantage of them, taking their stuff, hurting them, going against someone who's weak and defenseless because they don't have a strong defender. At least it doesn't look like it. Whereas God has sworn that would be his role. And so, you don't spit in the eye of the kid who's got the big brother who's going to beat you up, right? That's kind of the same concept here. Whoso mocketh the poor reproacheth his maker, and he that is glad at calamities shall not be unpunished. What's it mean to be glad at calamities, Patrick? It's not just doing bad stuff, but you're rejoicing when bad things happen to other people. Okay? Haha, they got what they deserved. Right? wanting people to have harm or affliction. So one who is pleased at calamities, at harm, says that they won't be unpunished. The Lord will deal with them. Children's children are the crown of old men, and the glory of children are their fathers. Now, Brother Don can explain this one, right? Children's children's grandchildren. I'm sure the next correlation is true as well. Children's children's children. It's something that you are highly pleased and rejoicing in, and just what a treat. The crown is a pinnacle. It doesn't take much for grandparents to brag about their grandkids, right? What about the other one? The glory of children are their fathers. Glory has the idea of rank or honor. What you think, boys? Y'all with me?
Father, glory has rank.
Mm-hmm.
The
glory of children is their fathers.
The rank of children.
Position of honor based on who dad is. Yeah. Which, from a child's perspective, from dad's perspective, that means we better be worthy of that. Right? Excellent speech becometh not a fool, much less do lying lips a prince. I think that means, Connor. Becoming means suitable, appropriate. So you would not expect fair, eloquent, just noble words to come flowing out of a fool's mouth, naturally. Well, by the same token, it is much more inappropriate and not suitable for a prince, a noble one who's in a position of authority and responsibility, to engage in lying. It's not comely, it's not suitable, it's not appropriate. And you may say, well, good thing I'm not a prince. But if you look over there in Revelation, who has made us kings and priests? Right? Jesus. Do you think that this applies to you? Yes, okay. That's the point I want. All right. A gift is as a precious stone in the eyes of him that hath it. Whithersoever it turneth, it prospereth. All right. Precious stone. You ever looked at a diamond under the light? You ever? No? Let Mama look at her ring one time, and you'll see that wherever you turn that stone, you'll see these little sparkles. Doesn't matter which direction. Well-cut stone, you'll see all sorts of sparkles. Okay? That's the word picture that's being used there for any gift, that the person who has it, is there looking at it, to them it is, just a lovely, good thing. Now, in Proverbs, there are two kinds of gifts. One that has a very positive connotation, and one that's very negative. What would we call a gift that's in the negative? A bribe. So you don't want the judge that's supposed to be hearing your case admiring the keys to this new car that the other side just gave him. All right? That ain't good. And so if it's used in that sense to prosper your ill-gotten gains, that would be a very negative thing. But there's also a positive, and you can see that later in chapter 21, 14. Proverbs 21:14. A gift in secret pacifieth anger, and a reward in the bosom strong wrath. And so one of the ways that you can seek peace with somebody is to quietly and discreetly give them a gift. Not one that's open and over the top so that they feel boxed into a corner about this, that you're trying to hold it over their head, but given in secret. And it can calm anger and calm strong wrath. So that would be an example of a positive. So which one is being considered here in verse 8? Probably a positive. The next verse after it is also a positive, and so maybe those two are linked together. It's true either way. So verse 9 says, He that covereth a transgression seeketh love, but he that repeateth a matter separateth very friends. Right? So not every wrong, slight irritation that somebody does to you has to be brought up. And if your motivation is to build up people and love between one another, you won't. Whereas if you're bent out of shape and your dander's up and you want to complain and whine about how you've been treated by so-and-so, and you start going around and telling so-and-so you start telling everybody about what so-and-so did, well, guess what? You're driving wedges between that individual and everyone that you talk to. So that's the idea of repeating a matter separateth very friends. Now this is different than somebody engaging in a cover-up to try and hide a sin. Right? We're not talking about trying to conceal wrongdoing so no one gets caught. That's not what's being advocated for. But to cover over a transgression is seeking love. So this is the idea of throwing that mantle of love over somebody, of just, I can let this thing go without bringing it up. I don't have to have every slight, every irritation, every wrong be avenged or pound of flesh indirectly or directly. But seeking love, right? If you go look at the definition of charity in 1 Corinthians 13, there's a lot of being long-suffering, patient, kind, thinking the best rather than the worst. And so this falls in line with that. Any questions on verses 1 through 9? So anything that's in italics is added by the translators to try to make it make more sense in English. I think it reads fine, a matter separateth friends. I think the idea behind it is there's something that shows that even close friends is what the translators are trying to emphasize. This is not just the acquaintance level. But yeah, that's a nice thing about the honesty of the KJV, is that when you see the italics, you know that the translator is adding in a word that didn't come from a word in the direct text, but there's an idea or a thought that may not communicate easily into English, so they're trying to help you along to it, but they're also acknowledging this is what we're adding. Verse 10, a reproof entereth more into a wise man than 100 stripes into a fool. All right, David, what are stripes? When you're getting whipped or disciplined or caned, right? There's a public punishment of 100 stripes. Under the law, would 100 stripes even be lawful? No, the Jews limited it to 40. But the idea is that a reproof is more likely to get in and do some good. And a reproof is just speaking a correction, right? You ought not have done that, or you should have done that. It's more likely to get in and do some good than the punishment that a fool receives, right? He's massive punishment, but to actually change his behavior or thought process, the odds are much, much lower. Questions on that word picture? An evil man seeketh only rebellion, therefore a cruel messenger shall be sent against him. Remember, Solomon is writing this to royalty, to a son primarily, one who's got to rule a kingdom. Because when you're dealing with an evil man, you're dealing with someone who's not to be trusted, who's not trustworthy. As an adversary, he's only seeking rebellion against you, and so a cruel messenger should be sent against him. You can't use fair-spoken words. I mean, this is kind of kingdom ruling 202. Let a bear robbed of her whelps meet a man, rather than a fool in his folly. Well, what's a bear robbed of his whelps, Patrick? What's a whelp? Cub. All right. Mama bears like their cubs, y'all. Now let's say that you go take 2 of those cubs and the mama bear is left on her own in town. Would you want to meet said bear? No, this is about the most angry, ornery, just foul dispositioned animal you can be, and she's highly motivated to rip somebody up. Right? He says, and you can say this is hyperbole, but this is Proverbs, it would be better for you to go have lunch with that bear and interact with that bear in that state than to interact with the fool in the midst of his folly, right? In the midst of his just worthless endeavors.
It's better to meet the bear than the crazy person.
Well, not crazy off his rocker, but one who is engaging in just this ungodly, vain activities, whatever it is that he's, It's a broad category, a fool in his folly. A little bit of folly, it's not that big of a deal. This is kind of putting it in perspective. Yeah, it is. 13, whosoever rewardeth evil for good. All right, so someone has done good unto you, and in return, rather than doing good, you do evil unto them. Evil shall not depart from his house. Again, the general theme from Proverbs is reaping what you sow. True in David's case. Yep. Uriah had been true and faithful to him. And he had received great evil at David's hand, and evil did not depart from David's house. That was what was told explicitly by Nathan. Good example. All right. Any of y'all ever played in the creek and tried to dam it up? Okay. That's what the next verse is about. The beginning of strife is as when one letteth out water. Therefore leave off contention before it be meddled with. All right, so you've got your creek dammed up, your mud, right? And you poke a little hole, or you just make a little trench in the top of that dam so the water can get through. What happens almost immediately? More water collapses in, forward long, the whole thing busts apart, and whoosh, it's washed away. Just one little poke. All right, did you exert enough force to blow up that dam with your hand? No. All right, the water did. Well, he says that's the same way of starting strife, conflict, irritation, chewing on each other's nerves. We've never done this as siblings, right? Right? There's a tone in your voice where mom says, stop, because what's going to happen? Somebody's about to start crying, because while you are starting out in the strife, it will get there pretty quick. So what's the advice? The beginning of strife is as one letteth out water. Therefore, leave off contention before it be meddled with. When should you leave off your contention? Yeah, before you start messing around with it. Verse 15, He that justifieth the wicked, and he that condemneth the just, even they are both abomination to the Lord. All right, so to justify the wicked would be a judge saying to the wicked, guilty individual, say, he's innocent. And to condemn the just is take the one who is innocent, we're pronouncing him guilty, and go bear his sentence. Both of those scenarios are an abomination to the Lord. This goes back to what we've been talking about in Romans, that for God to be just, he couldn't just look at us, well, they said sorry, they're wicked, they're guilty, I'll just say they're okay. Couldn't do it. That would be an abomination. He could not do that himself. That was why he had to make us righteous. And again, you're talking to prince, son, future ruler, having respect to persons. Well, if this is your friend, this is your buddy, well, I'm just going to, give you a pardon for this one, right? We all know you did it, but you're my friend. Versus, this guy's a political adversary. We got to get rid of him, even though he hasn't done anything to us. That's what Solomon did to Jeroboam, right? You may not remember that, but Solomon had promoted a young man named Jeroboam, position of rank and authority. He was a real useful fellow. And then God told Solomon that Jeroboam was going to get part of the kingdom, and Solomon went about trying to kill him. And so he fled. And it wasn't until after Solomon was dead and Solomon's son Rehoboam was coming on the scene to be, officially named king of all the tribes that Jeroboam came back. And that was when they asked Rehoboam the question of, will you make life easier? He took 3 days, listened to the council, and said, no, I'm going to make it harder. And 10 of the tribes says, we don't have anything to do with you. We're going to go over here. We're going to make Jeroboam our king. Verse 16, wherefore, that's why. Why is there a price in the hand of a fool to get wisdom, seeing he hath no heart to it? All right, so fool is willing to pay to try to get wisdom. He says, but it doesn't make any sense because they have no heart behind it, no desire for it. It's kind of like someone going to a college focused on theology and doesn't believe that God is who he says he is. You got a piece of paper, you've paid a lot of money for it, but if you don't have a heart for it, it's kind of a silly thing. 17, a friend loveth at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. A fair weather friend is not really a friend. A brother is born for adversity. You discover those relationships and how they're made of in those hard times. A man void of understanding striketh hands and becometh surety in the presence of his friend. Right, Elliot, what's surety? One way to think about it is to guarantee someone else's actions, often in the form of a loan. So if you went out and bought a car and you went to the car dealership and you don't have credit, we need someone else on here that can co-sign on this loan, and you bring me to it. If I were to sign on it, I would be a surety guaranteeing your behavior. A man void of understanding strikes hand and becomes surety in the presence of his friend. The general rule in suretyship is don't do it, right? You can have control over your behavior, but you don't have control over somebody else. And so it's not a wise course of action. Bail bondmen, you go to jail and they bail you out, right? You're supposed to put up a big fine to ensure you come back to court. Well, the bail bondmen, they will pay the big dollars. You pay a little bit. And then if you don't show up at court, You know who goes chase you down? The bail bondsman. Right? They don't have to take police, resources. That's when you get shows like Dog the Bounty Hunter, who are chasing after guys who skip bail because those people need to get their money back because you have to show up. So the bail bondsman is being a suretyship for your presence. Verse 19, he loveth transgression that loveth strife, and he that exalteth his gate seeketh destruction. So we got two different concepts going on. One who loves transgression, that loveth strife. Right? So you have an individual who loves strife. Why in the world would somebody love strife? A lot of people make a lot of money in strife. Some people like to argue. I mean, there are entire industries that are built on strife. Lawyers were illegal when Georgia was first founded. They thought the problems would go away if the lawyers weren't here. Turns out they were wrong. But, the military-industrial complex. All sorts of people who have incentive for people to be at odds and in conflict. But ones who love strife and conflict also love transgression. So that's the statement that someone who loves strife, what the scripture says is, well, they also love transgressions. Right? So not someone that you should be modeling or emulating. He that exalteth his gate seeketh destruction. All right, so to exalt your gate, your town, your complex, your home, ancestry, right? The exalt is building it up, glorifying it, right? Well, what have you learned about what precedes a fall? Right. Your pride, right? Well, if you're building up yourself and your life and your family and trying to make it as this big or abundant, wonderful thing, and that's the most important feature. What you're seeking is a ruin, is a loss, is a humbling, whether you actively know it or not. Yeah, I mean, I think imagine like the entry into like your walled compound. He that hath a froward heart findeth no good, and he that hath a perverse tongue falleth into mischief. Froward heart, perverse, crooked. You don't find good. It's not where you're looking. It's not what you're seeking. It's not what you're benefiting. It won't be what you're finding. And he that has a perverse tongue falls into mischief. Right? Can our mouths get us into a great deal of trouble? Boy, howdy. He that begetteth a fool doeth it to his sorrow, and the father of a fool hath no joy. All right, so same way we understood a children's children, the crown of old men, to have a child who doesn't have the fear of God before their eyes and pursuing the vanity of this world, it's a sorrowful thing. No joy. 22, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. Right? You could look at this two ways. One, on the impact of that individual. Right? One who has a merry heart in themselves, there's a physical good to it, to yourself, in your physical reaction, versus a broken spirit makes even your body afflicted by it, right? The state of your inner man, or the peace or absence thereof, can show up in your physical life. Well, beyond just yourself, it's true based on how you impact others, right? You can have an individual that you come around and they are glad in heart and merry and encouraging, uplifting. Well, it's just, you feel better just from being around them. And those other folks, you can have just a great day. You've been doing just fine. There's nothing wrong with you at all. And then you go interact with this individual who is just so down in the mouth and mully grubby and just everything is the worst, that you come away feeling worse, just feeling weak and drained. So impact on self and impact on others. Here's a negative sense of a gift. A wicked man taketh the gift out of the bosom to pervert the ways of judgment. All right, so you're going out to lunch with the judge and you have to reach into your vest pocket and slide him some coin over there, right? You're taking that gift surreptitiously, secretly, to pervert the ways of judgment. I want to make sure the judge rules the right way. You know, zoning officer, I want to make sure this is rezoned the right way. Yeah. But who does that? Well, that's your smart business. No. Wicked men. Yeah. Wisdom is before him that hath understanding, but the eyes of a fool are in the ends of the earth. What's that one mean? Right? So before means be close, present, at hand. And the other, you've got the eyes of a fool are in the ends of the earth. I don't know. I'm not sure this is exactly right. I haven't finished chewing on this one, but when you're talking to someone who has understanding, they tend to be focused right where you're at. Their advice tends to be something that is concrete and actionable, and it's very relevant, whereas the fool tends to have these pie-in-the-sky dreams and schemes, and it's all going to be done, it's all going to work out, it's just going to happen, and but the way you get there is so far away. There's no like clear, visible path. It's just like trying to describe something that's way on the other side of the horizon.
One knows something, the other hasn't got a clue.
Right. He said one knows something and the other doesn't have a clue. 25, a foolish son is a grief to his father and bitterness to her that bare him. Right, so again, the same concept of the impact on parents, grief and bitterness to the mother and father. Also, to punish the just is not good, nor to strike princes for equity. To punish the just, right? To punish the just is not good. This would be someone who's innocent should not receive a sentence, a condemnation, wrath. Right? So if you're ever fearful about, will God punish you for your sins, since Jesus has already borne that punishment and he has made you just, here, kind of this double jeopardy concept of that since you've been declared just by his acquittal, his justification, it would not be good to punish you. And God, who is holy, can't deny himself, and he won't do that which is not good. Right? Everything he does is just and holy. Nor to strike princes for equity. So equity is a great legal term. There's actually a separate court system over in England where you've got the law and then equity. Equity is more like fairness. So sometimes you don't have a monetary damage, but you need some other type of relief, injunctions. And so you could say to strike princes, that's just as it wouldn't be just not to punish the just is not good. It's not right to have princes be struck. It wouldn't be fair or appropriate.
I thought equity was money you can't take.
Yeah, different form of equity.
equity being equal. So that's what he's.
Yes, yeah, yeah. All things being equal, what should be done? Yeah. Verse 27. He that hath knowledge spareth his words, and a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit. That word excellent means cool, chill, quiet. So the calm man with few words is more likely to describe one who has knowledge and understanding versus the emotional hothead who's always popping off in the mouth.
The hothead's always trying to say something, can't keep
Gain attention or prove how smart he is. Yeah. Yeah. Even a fool, when he holdeth his peace, is counted wise, and he that shutteth his lips is esteemed a man of understanding. Right. So you can even act like a man of understanding just by holding your trap shut. My granddaddy's folk expression was that an empty wagon rattles loudest.
Better to be quiet and thought a fool than open your mouth and prove it.
Yeah. Yeah. Remove all doubt. New Testament uses the expression of studying to be quiet.
Someone who's wise, in any given situation, sees the bigger picture, whereas a fool is just seeing, like, they're not, we see this bigger picture of being of heaven, whereas they're just seeing, like, this is it.
Yeah.
That's it. There's nothing else to it. And so they struggle and have more struggles and hard times because they're not seeing.
They're limited by this natural sight. I think that's an interesting point. Yeah. Well, who's the embodiment of wisdom? Christ. Yeah. Him that hath understanding. Wisdom is before him that hath understanding, but the eyes of a fool are in the ends of the earth. Limited to the bounds of this creation. Any other thoughts or questions?
I always say that silence is golden.
Yeah.
When wisdom and, keep be silent is golden, to be quiet and have wisdom.
Has at least the appearance of wisdom. It also describes that choice words, words fitly spoken at the right time, are like golden apples and pitchers of silver. So there's a time to be quiet, there's a time to speak. So I had one other thought on Deuteronomy 1 in connection with this morning's message about faith. Abraham, it was counted for him in righteousness. If you went back to Deuteronomy 1 and 32, when the people are grumbling, right? He's recounting what happened 38 years ago of do we go in or not, and they're accusing God of bringing him out to kill him, and he tried to encourage them, saying, don't dread or be afraid, the Lord will go with you. The summary of their behavior in 132 said, yet in this thing ye did not believe the Lord your God. So their conduct, the words and everything is all summarized as their lack of faith or lack of belief that God would do and was able to do what he said he would do. So you've got both a positive example in Abraham and the contrary here. And this generation, I believe God describes it as an evil generation. Verse 35. There shall not one of these men of this evil generation see that good land